Yeah, thank you very much. I will be hosting the first panel today, and for those who did not know what Technology Foundation is until they entered this room and heard it from Saka, we are Berlin's innovation agency in this sense that we are identifying upcoming emerging technologies. We do agenda setting, and we also deal a lot with open data because we feel that data-driven innovation is one of the most important topics for cities in the future, and is one of the foundations of smart cities. And smart city is not only a buzzword, but also a political aim we have here in Berlin. So that's what I have to do with open data. And then we agreed before we started the panel that the panelists take the chance and introduce them quickly themselves with 2 or 3 sentences where they come from, why they're here, and then we'll start the discussion. All right? Okay, so I think that we will start with Pieter.
Is this on? Yes, okay, very good. I'm Pieter Colpaert, I'm from Ghent. I can talk very long about Ghent. It's like one of the most beautiful places in Flanders. It's close to Brussels. I'm active as an open data or open transport activist as part of the Open Knowledge International. I'm also working on Open Knowledge Belgium, so I'm a member of the board over there, and I'm doing a PhD on how to publish transport data to the web.
Hi, I'm Kloiber. I work here in Berlin at the Open Knowledge Foundation. Pieter is my colleague from Belgium, and Helene is my colleague from Berlin. And I'm focusing on the topics open data and civic tech, like how can we reuse data, how can startups build up their services on open data, and that's something I'm working on in the program Code for Germany.
Alexander has his own mic.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Alex Pilz from Berlin. I'm work here from the Public Transport Authority, VBB, Verkehrsverbund Berlin-Brandenburg. We are not an operator. We are the umbrella organization. And yeah, 3 years before we haven't had open data. I think exactly 2 years before, in November 2012, we have had our first hack day, or better, it's from public-owned company, but it was a developer day, as we issued our open data for transport in GTFS. And so, yeah, I'm responsible at my company for gathering data and information systems. And so I think I can contribute any expectations and yeah, things we've learned and not learned, and things happened and not happened. So, yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as you probably have also already noticed, that we are here with Allrider. So we will, of course, focus on mobility, but I think that we can broaden it up at the first session also to look into other aspects of open data. But first of all, I would like to, as a primer, see where we are standing right now. And I think probably most of you have an idea of where we're standing here, although not everybody knows everything, so it will also be very interesting to hear what our Berlin guests say. But being a good host, I would like to ask Pieter first, as he came here from Belgium, to give us an idea, what's the state of open data in Brussels or in Belgium as a whole?
That's a very difficult question, because Belgium is a very complex organization. It's like we have a lot of governments. Like once people were laughing with us because we didn't have a government. That's not true. We still had too many governments. So on each level, there's someone who wants to say something about open data, or they haven't heard about it. So we still need to convince them. So it needs a lot of sensibilizing to actually get to them. So right now we have some regions who are really interested in open data. For instance, the Flemish government did a huge job in opening a lot of data. They go to the classic steps. They have an open data portal. They organize a hackathon. They start communicating amongst each other, and then they notice that their data is of not enough quality, and they start asking more funding for actually getting the data in higher quality. And that's where we are at in Flanders. In Brussels itself, it has an open data portal as well. It's I think it's more recent, so it looks more fancy, but still they're more early in their opening up their data. But they're doing a good job in terms of mobility. Right now they have like, they are starting a big smart mobility project, and they are going to open up a lot of data sets. Wallonia, they have a lot of geospatial data sets that are in the open. And then if you're not talking about the regions, on federal level, we have some data sets that really data sets that get in the open, not like the government that says everything is open. No, just organizations that are doing it. And finally, on the local level, we have some cities who are doing it, like the biggest cities in Belgium. They're also doing open data. So yeah, that's about it, I think.
Okay, thanks, Pieter. So next, I think, is Julia, right?
Mm-hmm. When we look at the situation in Berlin, I think it's, you can compare it to the situation all across Germany, because in Berlin, you have data sets from specific districts. Some are open. Lichtenberg, for example, has lots of open data, and there's no statutory rule. So each district administration is free to choose whether it wants to open up data or not. That means a lot is depending on people within the public administration that push the topic. Berlin was one of the pioneers. The data portal has been around for 3 years, I think. But still, open data is not very high up on the political agenda. There's not a lot of political commitment. I think that might have something to do with the fact that there's not a lot of best practices. So why should we open up data? Sometimes I have the impression when I'm talking to politicians or people within the public administration that open data is still this geeky topic that's wanted by some, that geeks are pushing it forward and demanding open data, and that the benefits for the public administration, like the efficiency, or also for the city, that those benefits are not very obvious yet. And what else? And I hope that with the implementation of the new e-government law, things will change here in Berlin, and data will be open by default, or information will be open by default. And we can already see that in Hamburg. Hamburg, the first city that has a transparency law and a transparency portal with where data and information has to be open by default. And of course, there's also like a lot of technical restrictions and limitations that come with that. But that might be something we can discuss later. Also, there's lots of community here, so would be great to open up the round later and to discuss.
Definitely. I think that this is something which we should really try to work a little bit on in our session today, to see probably how can we also path the way to make more use of open data. But you already, when you introduced yourself, Alexander, mentioned that, you gathered some experience over the last years. And transportation data is something where I would say there's made use of open data. But on the other hand, the transportation authorities usually think that this is their data. So they are providing services based on their data to their customers. I wouldn't say that this is totally true for VBB, but that's my experience, that usually
but it was.
Yeah, but it was. So what would you say? Where are you going now? I mean, is what you have reached so far the point where you're standing, or what are you planning, so that we maybe come now to what's going on? Where are we going?
Okay, thanks. I can talk for the special field of public transport data, that's clear. But one step back. Our process to give the data out to the open data portal of City of Berlin, it wasn't politically driven process. It wasn't by our own that we said it's impossible, and it's not impossible, we should do that because there's so much efforts for that. No, that wasn't. It was politically driven. I think in spring 2012, there were a lot of conferences and something like that with the Open Knowledge Foundation, and it was as a parliament, it was at the body Berlin Open Data Day, and every time we got the wind from the front that we are the bad guys. We wouldn't give out our data, and I think it was in summer 2012 we said, okay, it's too much pressure, we can't do that anymore. And so we opened our mind and said, okay, Open Knowledge Foundation come to us, let's talk, what could we do? And that was a decision to do these Hack Day in November 2012. And that was more or less a come together to bring a mind-changing process in role, that we as a public transport authority and our operators understand that it's not a threat to give the open data to the developers. It's maybe a chance to, in two ways, maybe to establish new applications, and on the other hand to get a good press and good political mind of public transport in Berlin, that is modern, that is open for other ways to give information to the customers. And so we have done that in November, and now 2 years later, we try to establish a new hackathon in February to bring more drive in the possible development of things. Maybe it's a gaming thing to bring a little browser-based or app-based game to public transport topics to the customer. Public transport is fun. Go by bus and catch points or something like that. To have an I don't know how to describe it, more attractive thing to public transport. We are boring. We are the chain between points of local interest, between work and spare time. We are only a chain, and so it could be. But in our perspective, there was no need to establish a new travel planner or establish a new timetable board or something like that. We watched for the third-party application, maybe the movie finder, first row in the newest movie, how can I get there, in which cinema, or maybe plan your new flat, where can I live, where can I pay for, and where can I work. These things we expected that should be or could be developed by the community, and there's 3 projects, I think. Berlinsuchdich.org is one of that, and it's a portal. There is an isochronic scheme about Berlin, how long is a travel from A to B, and it's combined with an open interface from Immobilien Scout. And so if you are planning to move in the city, you can plan better than before. And that's the kind of application where we are looking for. That should be developed more and more.
Okay, thank you. I would go totally with Julia. She said that there's the question whether you have somebody who is somehow an open data champion in the administration who really makes it his or her topic. And in 2012, actually, I was the permanent secretary in Berlin responsible for open data. And that was the time when we had that open data portal established as a stable portal. And I can remember how hard it was actually to get. I mean, we were talking about 65,000 euros a year. And Berlin has a budget of 20 billion euros. And I've been attending more than one committee in the parliament just to make sure that they really would give us 65,000 euros. So it's absolutely ridiculous compared to what use you can make out of this. But the mindset was a totally different one. And we were always discussing in the administration, why? And that's the same question that you asked. Why should we give away the data? There should somebody come and pull it, but we are not the ones who are pushing it. And this, I think, is one of the major problems when we are talking about open data. How can we make sure that administration understands that open data actually also helps them to provide the services they are paid for? I mean, that's something which is obviously not very obvious, not very very much a priority for administration to do what they are paid for, probably, but at the end of the day, it would make life easier for them, and understanding that is probably one of the problems. But what would you think is, when we're now looking to the obstacles and probably also incentives we could give to have a broader approach to open data? Starting again with Pieter and your experiences from Belgium, especially taking into account that you have a very complex administrational system, I'd say, at least when you look to it from Germany.
Well, apart from being very complex, it's also very big. So if you work with a lot of people, then how do you organize yourself to actually know where a specific data set is? And that's something before open data that we didn't have in any kind of government. So now we have a lot of, just to give an example, we have a lot of tourism bodies, like on the local levels. Each city has something about tourism. Then the provinces have something about tourism. Then the regions have something about tourism, and they each almost have the same data. Now they're finally thinking about opening up, and now they actually see that as a big advantage, because they actually can spark the conversation about this kind of data. Like, okay, yeah, you have an abstract about this tower, you have one. Okay, will we merge them, or which one is of highest quality, and so on and so forth. So in fact, just opening up your data inside a government, make sure that you actually are talking about data quality, that you know which one has the data, in fact, and that is already a revolution on itself, because you are actually making public servants talk with each other. In something like a huge organization like the Belgian government, this is something huge, and this is I think going to be the biggest reason why there's going to be more open data in the future in Belgium. Then specifically for transport, I think the reason is very simple, or the benefit of doing it is very simple. We cannot keep this situation where every public transit authority is creating their own app. We cannot keep this situation. This is, thank you. Because right now, so they create their app, they publish it, then they get feedback like, oh yeah, but I cannot use buses with this. So what they start to do is start sharing their data with the bus company. The bus company says, oh yeah, if I share my data with you, I also want your data, and the ball keeps rolling, and it gets in this untenable situation where everyone is just sharing data with people who cannot build apps. It's not their main priority to build apps, so why should they? And so the next step that a lot of people are like, if you read Twitter about annoyances with mobility apps, then you mostly see, oh, just give your data to Google, damn it. Like Google Maps, why is your data not yet on my Google now that I just can see when to go to my next appointment? And to these people, I just say, okay, it's okay that you ask that. I feel your pain. But do you only want Google to be able to innovate with this data? So don't ask, give your data to Google, just ask, open up your data, because we want everyone, every startup, every digital innovation center, every incubator to be able to say, here's the data, make something beautiful with it.
Okay. So, Julia, from your point of view, when you're looking into Berlin especially, but to Germany as a whole, I mean, I think you have a quite good overview over the situation in Germany as a whole, but if you compare it, are there, also when you're taking into account, are there other cities that are doing better or worse, and why is that probably? Is there something that you can see a pattern or something like that?
Oh, there's small cities like Moers who are doing very good compared to Berlin, Hamburg, bigger cities. But what I believe is crucial to understand is that this idea of government as a platform that Tim O'Reilly already coined in 2010, that's still a very important idea, that governments or even companies, like the companies have understood, like if you become a platform, then it's more powerful than if you're only the service provider. If you're the platform for other service providers like Amazon, they started out as a service provider, and now they are a massive platform where others are tapping into and like building their service based on the platform. And if governments understand they are not the ones who have to build apps or procure apps, if they understand that external innovation is something very important and something they can benefit of, if they become the platform and open up data. A really interesting example from Cologne. Sabine Möwes, she's leading the e-government department in Cologne, and a couple of years ago she said, oh yeah, on our website we had like tons of information on like anything that citizens wanted to know about the city, and they wouldn't open up the information because they wanted citizens to visit their website, because they were counting the views, like how many people are visiting our website. And yeah, but that changed. Like they understood, okay, it doesn't really matter that whether citizens get the information from our website. It's no matter where they get it from. For us as a city, it's important that they get the right information. So to open up, to become a platform, to deliver information, or to deliver information to other companies so that they can implement it in services. And I think the same goes for VBB, opening up. And in the end, it's about customer service for VBB, no matter what application their customers use. Yeah, if they can choose out of a variety of applications, then it's good for transport agencies. And what else did I wanted to say? Yeah, I think this whole like platform theme is still a very important one.
But I just want to stick a moment with the administrational level, because, yeah, understanding that government could be and should be a platform is definitely a cultural change, a pivotal change, so to say, for German minds. But when it comes to when we're more on the working level, as far as I remember, the most used data format in public administration is the Excel sheet. At least it was true for Berlin, and everybody builds the Excel sheet in a different way. So it's not even useful to know that Excel is obviously one of the most used formats. The question of how do I harvest data? How can I compile data, which is then added with metadata and then provided on the platform and then addressable via an API and not as a download of a PDF or something like that, yeah. Because that's something that you also see sometimes. Really, you can download or a CSV table, which is obviously something where you can make use of, but it's not really consumable when you're looking into automated use of data. So when we're looking into this, where do we stand there? I mean, do you have, in Belgium, other initiatives to standardize data, or are you using the electronic file, yeah, the e-Akte, which is also a thing that is luring in Berlin administration or processes for years, but nobody has yet seen the electronic file in Berlin. It's still a ghost.
Okay.
How is it in Ghent or in Brussels?
Well, at first, well, let me speak just for the international
yeah, sure.
area, because
yeah, excellent.
First of all, you said like, okay, yeah, where we just have a CSV format. Well, in fact, GTFS, one of the most successful formats to exchange time schedule information, is CSV format. So CSV is not that bad, in fact. We over the last decades, we have been working on a lot of standards for public transit authorities. And if we just look in the wild, then we can say that none of these have actually done anything good. The only thing that we actually really have is GTFS for exchanging time schedule information. That works. Why? Because it's really simple. Now I'm probably going to make some people really angry, like in these transport bodies, maybe not over here, but in these standardization bodies that have put done a lot of work in doing that. I'm not saying that this work has been useless, because now we can actually refer to these standards to actually say, okay, if we mean that word, we mean exactly that definition, and there's a lot of knowledge inside these bodies. Like we have Transmodel. Transmodel is a very nice model, which is a huge document of actually explaining all the words, the relations between these things, then specifying how this data should be exchanged through XML services and so on. Well, it's a huge investment, and in fact, for transit agencies to actually comply to that. Then, when we're not talking just about transit schedules, we can also talk about real-time data inside an API, and there we also have a European standard called Siri. Now, I have not yet seen a good Siri service, and I also don't care, because if I create an app, I just want to get the latest arrival times at a certain bus stop, right? So if whether that's in a standardized format or whether that's just the list, okay, well, just give me the data. I'm going to work with it. So I'm not advocating Siri. I will not do that. Just open up your data in a machine-readable format like JSON. Just get it out there, and yeah, we can start working with it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, when we're looking into how can we, for example, scale an application, then it would be, from a developer standpoint of view, probably very useful to have at least a comparable format, you know, because I don't want to write parsing modules for every data format I come over when I go through Europe. So I would say it might make sense, although CSV probably very nice format, I know, but on the other hand, I have to parse it, right? And so when I'm working with JSON, it's definitely easier for me, although it's just 2 or 3 lines of code more. I totally agreed. But the question is really whether it makes sense to have at least a best practice or common understanding of how I should structure my data and what metadata should be available. And I see that there's still a broad room.
Exactly. So let me disambiguate 2 things. One thing, we have the time schedules, which is like the policy has decided this when a certain bus is going to depart, and on what regular basis this is. This is a time schedule. This is regulated from policy. Then on the other side, you have reality. What really happens will happen. Just saying, okay, it has 5 minutes delay or something. Then what happened? That's just the historic data. And what's happening right now? Okay, the current stop times. And this is what I call stop times. I don't call it real-time data, because there's an entire range of things that actually happen. So so these 2 things. For the time schedule data, GTFS is a perfect tool. I would just say let's keep that. It can be seen as a part of transmodel. It's standardized. It's okay. Then for the stop times, currently we indeed do not have this thing where there's this standardized something. Okay, we have Siri, but it's too complex, and no one is actually adopting it. There's no use of actually adopting it, because it's heavy. It's heavy, and even hackers are not going to implement it in their app that way. So at the Open Knowledge Foundation International, what we're now doing within the Open Transport Working Group is creating a vocabulary. So we're saying, okay, if you use the word trip, what do you exactly mean? Because there are a lot of definitions for the word trip, or journey, or connection, or station. Even station. What is a station? Is that the exact point where something is stopping, or is that like a collection of places where and how many modes? Is that also for bicycles? Is that also a station? Like, all these things need to be disambiguated. And within our group at the Open Knowledge Foundation, we decided to start using URIs for that. So we are going to use machine-readable things, URIs. The benefit of URI is that from the moment that you have it, no one will say that it means something else, because you're the boss of that URI. With words, you have this problem, because words can be ambiguous. URIs cannot be ambiguous. So that's what we started doing. We started creating URIs, which then say, okay, this is a stop point. And a stop point, this is exactly the location where a certain vehicle stops. We give a definition to that. So now in your JSON output of a real-time or stop time API, then now you can say, okay, I give this my word, whatever, but now I'm going to add context to my JSON file. Say, no, I'm getting a bit technical, sorry for that. But then I'm just going to say, okay, this word means actually this URI. This way, I have disambiguated my entire JSON output, and I have also made it interoperable with other services that also link their words to URIs. And this is, I think, where we should grow towards. And this is also like the next evolution that we see. The thing that I described with adding a context to JSON files, adding URIs to it, which give one meaning to a certain word, that's a JSON LD. It's something that is going to be bigger and bigger in the future, I promise.
Okay, cool. Julia, you want to add something to that? And I know that you are waiting for your chance to comment, but...
Yeah, we have two transport data experts on the stage, so it might be interesting to give a more broader picture on data standards are certainly important. There's a spending data standard. There's even a hygiene data standard developed by Yelp so that they can implement restaurant hygiene data into their applications. And because for startups or for people who develop apps, the districts of Berlin or even the city of Berlin, Germany, people think on a more international, global level. So it's important that there's standardized data sets and that can be used for the applications. And what else did I wanted to say? So it would be interesting. Beth Novak said that on a panel in London 2 weeks ago before we open up more data, to get a list what data is actually available within public administration, to see, okay, what can we ask for, and then not only to ask for more data, but to ask for better data. Because what I see a lot is that people or developers, and here are a lot of developers in the crowd, that they spend 80% of their time fixing bugs in the data or structuring the data, and then 20% on the actual application, and that's a big hurdle when it comes to developing applications. If you have to go through this dry valley where you're just scraping data or making sure that it's in the right format. And there was also a really great article a couple of weeks ago I think it was on Medium, and the title was "Eat Your Own Dog Food." That comes also from the software development, test your own applications and eat your own dog food, then compared with open data or data that public administrations release. Have you ever tried the data sets, or have other departments ever worked with the data sets you release? Have you been eating your own dog food? Have you been checking what you're putting out there? So that's also an interesting thought maybe in this regard. But yeah.
Okay, thanks. So, Alexander.
One topic was the question for standardization. In public transport, we offered an API. It's in principle an open API, but we are in Germany, so we need a little contract to let the developers work with the API. And we offer GTFS, and we have had a discussion with a lot of developers. What should we do? What is an API? Is it better than GTFS or not? And I think, or better, we decide, okay, we will offer both ways, but we see a lot of advantages on the way to offer an API. What is the reason for? The next thing is how should be the API defined? How is a standardization for that in Europe? To work for that example with GTFS needs an understanding of public transport, how it works. That line, maybe I remember on the hack day here 2 years before, there was a group, Ping Coding, that tried to establish a database, get out from the GTFS data, how is a train line running the whole day from A to B. And they doesn't know that it's usual that in the morning the train is not running from A to B, it starts in C to get to A. And so I think there is a little bit knowledge need to work with that data. So if you are a more non-professional public transport programmer, maybe it's better to work with an API, because you don't have to understand what is behind the data. If you are the very professional developer like Michael Kreil, he can work with the GTFS. He knows what is behind. So that is maybe one one criterion for how to do with what data for. The next thing is to understand that thing. The API to address, to get data, to write the right request to the core is not so easy. Every developer, private developer, who is using our API has a lot of questions. Nokia or Daimler or EOS, there are no need, no question. Here's our API, here is the short description, and the next thing, what we see was the established app. So it depends on the knowledge of the person who can work it. And the last thing, sorry, was standardization. Yes, there is no standardization in Europe for delivering data. Every organization in every country use their own standard, like the VDV, Verband Deutscher Verkehrsunternehmen in Germany, issued the so-called VDV 542. It's a 452 a regulation. It's old, 12 years old. You can't use it, but it's the current standard for delivering data. So, in fact, it's GTFS. You're right. It's not described what is a stop, what's a trip ID, and it should or it could be defined. But we are now approaching, or not the approach is there. We are in the real-time world. Everybody needs real-time data about maybe the status of elevators, the punctuality of trains, and stuff like that. And that's more complicated because you need APIs, because you can't collect real-time data. It's a complicated process, and you need a link between your data that you store in your system, the planned data, the GTFS or something like that, and the incoming real-time data. And that is a process not even Google has solved that problem. And so, yeah, we will see what happens on the market.
Looks like Pieter wants to respond.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that kind of reasoning, because that is exactly the topic of my PhD. Hey. It's so what I actually try to start disambiguating is within an API. An API is such a complex word. It's because you have so many kinds of different APIs, and what I try to bring right now is to talk about data publishing on the one hand and data services on the other. So data services are services that are actually getting where you can actually build an app upon. So do the transport authorities have to create their own services in order for app builders to start building? I believe not so, because that's in fact creating an API for a certain app. That's what an app builder should do. They should do that, or there should be a certain third party who creates APIs where other people can actually start creating certain apps upon. But it should be able to work with APIs that are publishing the data, and that is something that you should do. Publish APIs where you can get the real-time data. That's why you actually need APIs. That's what I felt like. Okay, we have this static file GTFS, but it needs to be. We need to add real-time data on that, so we need an API. So to bring it more concrete. So if you are going to create a route planning API, where apps can actually say, okay, yes, no, I can calculate the route from A to B with this system, it's not going to interrupt. It's not possible for these API users to do anything with the data. They only can do something with the service.
Yes. Right.
So they cannot even, for instance, a very simple use case, from the moment that they have a data set about the accessibility of the bus stops, they cannot bring this also within and say, okay, I'm in a wheelchair, so I also want to calculate the routes now. That won't be possible. They would have to start working with the GTFS file again, and the problem with that again is that it's not real time. So we need something in between there, in between data services, the route planning API, and in between the data dumps, the GTFS file. Yeah.
I was just wondering, because there's third parties who build APIs, right? Mm-hmm. But those third parties do also build applications based on APIs. Is that an issue? Is that a problem? Like, is that why like API documentations are maybe not as good as they could be?
Obscured, maybe?
It depends. As I say, we have, based on our API, and we are delivering real-time data too, is the Nokia Here app. Yeah, it's pre-installed on every Nokia, or now it's Windows operating system on mobiles. They are using our API. And you're right, you can't address a request and you will get back a route, and maybe if it depends from authority to authority, there are real-time data in or not, and in that special case we could offer maybe barrier-free routes. You can address, give me back a barrier-free route. It means you have to use elevators and barrier-free low-floor buses and so on. But in fact, it needs requirements from the developer to say, okay, your API should do that and that and that, and then we can reprogram let's reprogram our API, and that will be a new service in. But it's getting more and more complicated to do that. You're right, and I haven't any idea to bring it on a more simple way to a developer to use the API. Indeed.
Okay, sorry, I think that we have to make a short cut here at that point. Actually, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I haven't seen what Saka showed me, but I assume that we have still 5 minutes left or something like that, right?
We can do questions.
Exactly, so that's what that would be, I think. So I would say I had some other topics here on my list there that were probably also going more in the broader field, like the question of, is open data for everybody, how to handle digital divide, for example, or do we need an open data incubator to foster development of probably non-for-profit users, but also profitable users, business cases built on open data, apart from transportation data, which is working obviously quite well, as we can see from Allrider. But anyway, now we are going into the open rounds. Yeah? Julia already addressed that we have some developers here and open data activists. So now is your chance, asking question, probably not making too long comments because we are running out of time. But here we go. Who wants to add something? Yeah, in the last row.
If it comes down for the smart city, in the last discussions I was taking part, I recognized that bicycles are almost left out of the data stream. So any answers on that problem? How do you integrate cyclists into the smart city?
I don't know whether that's the answer to that question, but there's a really interesting project from Philadelphia called Cycle Philly. It's an app they developed together with the city. Like the community developed it, and then they paired with the city. And it's an app that helps people track their way to work, or like the routes they cycle. And they provide the data, or the community provides the data to the city, so that it helps the city to plan routes, or to see, okay, where are most people, what routes are most people using, and how can we like improve those routes. So that would be like one example from the States where that already works. But yeah, it's difficult. Like people have to share their routing data, or you could also, I guess, have systems that count how many cyclists like go towards or past what points. Yeah.
Sorry for just short adding. There's also from Strava, which is doing cyclists quantified self stuff. They have the global heat map, which is quite interesting. Anybody could get to it. They just like gather where everybody around the world is cycling. Plus they have also the metro labs where they gather data on the daily commuter cycling.
Okay, thanks. More questions? Yeah, I'd say we go now here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Leon. I was very interested to hear about the incubation part that you put in the end, because I heard in some ways little disappointment. And 2 years ago, VBB opened up data, and there wasn't really, let's say, enough happening with it. And Julia put the example of big online platforms that are very, very successful in opening their data and becoming platforms for other services. Well, I just wanted to stress that obviously one of the big differences is that these platforms always in the beginning provide a broad service, a broad support service, oftentimes incubation services, others, to build success stories on top of their platform. And these success stories are then often the pioneers that actually pull a lot of others into these kinds of platforms. So maybe in opening data sets, it would be very interesting to have services that build and help build these success stories to then actually show others that this is something worthwhile doing. So it's a great idea, and I think that's a path to go down.
Yeah, just a small comment. Yeah, we're working on that because we see that it also might solve another problem, that public administration realizes that it's good for them to provide companies with data or entrepreneurs with data or the Open Knowledge Foundation or whoever, or for Germany with data, because when they see their use cases and when they see that there's a real world application to the data, it will also help changing that mindset that we discussed at the beginning. So I'm very, very much into having a combination of give people room, give people access to data, give people access to administration, give people funding, and bind everything together. It mustn't be in the largest scale imaginable. It could be a small one, but just start with that. And that's something we are right now working on for the next year. Yeah.
I have the microphone. One remark to this, what you said, Nico. The problem in Berlin, for example, is the average age of the people in administration is 54, something like this. And for all these people, it's a mind change. So what we need is education of open data for the people, is scholarships, is qualifying. So if we have an education on open data, so the mind shift is easier for them. So we have this example of Meurs or Cologne or Hamburg, but we need more of this. And we have to communicate all these advantages of open data. I think this is one of the biggest problems we have in Germany.
You want to take it?
Yeah, and maybe, like, I think that's a very crucial point, that you need people within public administration that know what's state of the art outside. We see that in the US with, for example, the Presidential Innovation Fellows, where the White House invites the tech superstars for a year to work within public administration to show what's possible with technology. But we can also see that in Boston, Philadelphia, or Mexico City, where the cities have labs, have space for experiments, have space or room where people can actually fail, because failure is often not an option when we're talking about services that are provided by a city. But to develop a great new product, you have to fail fast, early, and often, probably. And so becoming an attractive employee for people that study software development, that's, I think, super important for cities in the next couple of years, because if you do not have people within your administration that know whom to approach or that know what's state of the art, then it will be impossible to thrive change and to be innovative.
Okay, maybe we can take one more question. Is that okay? So, anybody on this side? Because we have concentrated on this. Oh, the microphone's there. Okay, then you have a go.
Thanks. It's sort of a follow-on to that. In the UK, we've had data.gov.uk up for about 5 years, and for central government, the stuff that comes out of that is pretty good. You know, the data quality is fine. When you get down to local government, you're talking about PDFs, scanned PDFs with, no actual... And when you talk about 65,000 euros for a project, that's maybe one full-time member of staff. When we get to the point of open data being a part of public administration, that your over 50 workforce has to do it, and they don't have help because it's as essential to the parts of the job. Do you feel there's a sense of optimism that when open data becomes mandated, that there are the digital skills in places outside of government, outside of central cities, outside of places that have technology hubs, outside of places where they even know what open source technology is? There's a skills gap that's that's really hard to fix if you're 70 miles away from somewhere with a maker space?
Yeah, but then you maybe need like some central institution that says, okay, like this is the step 1, 2, 3, and this is how we're gonna do it, and we're starting with this data set, and please provide us like in the GovLab in New York, for example, they just introduced this very revolutionary format, roundtables, like getting people, data providers from within city government or like public administration together with people from the outside that reuse data. It's like a super simple format. Okay, just get together and discuss on a very geeky, nerdy level, like what you need as a data user and what we can provide. So, and within like lots of departments, for example, like the statistical data department, there's people who deal with data sets on a daily basis, and they just need the right people from outside to connect with and to talk on this very like geeky and level, and to deliver the data that's needed outside. Yeah.
I think one of your big advantages in the UK is the fact that you also have the ODI, and it's funded on the national level. Right, and you have £2 million a year, so that's something where you can work with. Julia, Maxim, Tom, we have been visiting London a couple of weeks ago and have been visiting the ODI as well, and have seen what the people are doing there. They're also providing something which is also essential. They're providing, like say, education on open data for companies and for the administration, and they earn money with that, which is also obviously a working business model. So we are trying to figure out whether this makes sense for us as well here in Germany, or in Berlin especially. But that's the point we are coming or closing the circle. As long as you don't have people who feel responsible in the government that open data should be something which is worth pursuing, then you really have the problem of resources and access. And you can only solve that when you have that switch there. All right, so I'd say...
Sorry, it's just this one comes from the people following on through our online streaming.
Yeah.
So we would like to ask particularly Pieter, like when data is made accessible, how can the right people be encouraged to build innovative solutions?
That's a very difficult question, because I don't know exactly what the data is, and if the data itself really already tells a story towards who you should start contacting. If it's about transport data, then I would say do events like this, but also invite technical people, get a conversation going, and yeah, just get the conversation going about the data itself. There was once Daniel Dietrich, who's also involved with Open Knowledge Germany. He once said, "Oh, Pieter, you really chose a really easy field, because you don't have to advertise anything. Transport data is so sexy." And he says it in a German way, which is like, transport data is sexy. It even sounds sexy. And
especially when you know Daniel, that's funny. Yeah.
But he's right. It is data that is going to get picked up anyway. There are a lot of people who are interested in transport data. There are startups even before there is data available. So I'm pretty sure that for transport data we will not need big encouragements to actually start working with the data, and that's different for some open government data sets where some data is really boring and we really need a lot of advertisement in order for people to get started with it.
Okay, so any more questions? Looks like we are finishing on time. I think, oh yeah, there's one. Yeah, I think the last question will be yours.
Have you, oh, hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so another UK person here. One question we've actually been dealing with in the UK is that it's really cool to kind of publish data for people to start building things on top of. But in some cases, when that data stops being available to people, that can be very, very disruptive to anyone building on top of that. It'd be really nice to hear your thoughts on if you've had to come across that yourselves yet, or what kind of measures you tend to take for that, because open data is often kind of framed as a gift, whereas in many cases the conversation is about being a right. So once it's been given out, then you can't stop giving it out, even if it isn't particularly publicly, politically useful for you to do so when you're the people releasing that data.
Any comments?
If people just don't want to publish any data anymore, they just stop doing it. That's because the data is mostly from the moment you publish data, it's already out of date. So it's only going to the longer it's just out there, it's just going to decrease in quality, and no one is going to use it anymore. It needs constant attention in order to actually keep data up to date. So from my experience, from the moment that they publish data, they actually see that the quality is not high enough, because mostly. Yeah, then we get into discussion what actually data quality is, but from the moment that you open up the data, then you get comments from outside, and then it's up to you whether you actually start replying on these comments or not, or whether you start doing your data policy, in fact, because start working on your data policy. Open data is one thing, but if you're not going to invest in the data itself, then the open data will become useless over time.
I think that we have in Germany that concept which is called Daseinsvorsorge, which means that the public administration is responsible to take care of that. You have water, you have electricity, you have working streets, you have a post office somewhere, and I think we should come to the point that there's also a need for data in Daseinsvorsorge. So I think that we should adopt really the idea that this is something which is a necessity. And it should be provided as an utility and not as something which is like a gift, as you said. Yeah. But rather, this is one of the infrastructural questions that the public administration has to answer. You want to make a last remark on that?
Yeah, last remark for that topic. Yes, it's a gift, but how often you will be gifted? Yeah, for our topic, it's. Every week we issued new data for our own timetable planning system. We issued 4 times a year a GTFS set. So that GTFS is not all the time actual in the portal, because we get not the response that it's needed to update every week. If we have more use of the data, we will bring more actuality in the data, maybe every month, maybe if it's necessary, and if there is a huge use or mass use of that data, we should do it weekly. Why? There are efforts to do that. It takes for our system vendor a lot of hours, working hours, that we should pay for, that they are bringing that data file together and bring it up to the platform data.berlin.de. So it depends. If there use, we will do that from our point of view.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think that we had a very interesting discussion over the last 60 minutes. I would especially like to thank my fellow panelists. Now I'm starting on this side, Alexander, Julia, and Pieter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for you attending and for listening to us and for the discussion with you. And so I think that we are now switching to the next panel, right? Thank you very much.